Hello everybody and welcome to YGZ Taiwan. I'm Lewis and in today's video I'm going to talk about discrimination in China and Taiwan. Now before you start writing that comment saying, oh well, discrimination happens everywhere, what about in your country, the UK, what about in the USA, and what about in all of these other countries? Well, yes, I am well aware that discrimination happens everywhere, but I just happen to right now live in Taiwan, and I lived in China before, and I just want to share with all of you guys my experience as a foreigner living in these countries. When I was back home in the UK, I wasn't a foreigner, and I'm well aware that, you know, these are my own personal experiences that I'm going to share with you. And, you know, not all of my experiences are the same as another person's experience. You know, somebody might have had a completely different experience. So please feel free to share that in the comment section below, and I'd be happy to have a little dialogue with you guys. So anyway, let's jump straight into it, shall we? Well, as you can see, it started raining once again. I start filming a video and it starts to rain. So I guess I'll have to finish this video when I get home. But luckily, through the magic of editing, we can just go there now. Typical, isn't it? As soon as I get home, the weather clears up and now we've got a beautiful day. But I guess this is Taiwan and that's why I love it. So I'm just going to stand here on my balcony, drink a nice old cup of tea, and just talk to you guys for a little bit more. Beautiful. So being a foreigner in China, you'll notice that the Chinese people are a lot more open with their discrimination. Now, what I mean by this is that a word that you'll hear very often when you're just walking down the streets in China is 老外. Be it in a big city, a small city, a town, a village, you'll constantly hear the word foreigner, or 老外as the Chinese like to call it. You'll be walking down the street and then you'll just be minding your own business, and then suddenly you'll just hear 老外, 老外, 你看, 老外, 老外. It'll either be like an older person or a little kid, doesn't matter who it is, someone will be pointing at you and calling you a foreigner. Now, whether this word is derogatory or a bad word, that's open for debate. But one thing I can tell you is it's not nice to be walking down the street as a foreigner in another country and have somebody literally point at you and call you a foreigner. That's not a good thing. I remember one time I went to a restaurant and even the waiter in the restaurant called me a foreigner. Now, is that really acceptable? I even complained to his manager about it, saying, I don't want to be called a foreigner. He can either call me Mr., Sir, or just not even address me at all. But don't call me a foreigner. And this guy definitely didn't get in trouble for it, because every other day I would see him standing outside the restaurant, smoking a cigarette. So, you know, he did apologize to me. The manager did express his apologies. But at the same time, there were no repercussions for this kind of action. Another thing about being a foreigner in China, you have to understand that they have this bargaining culture, 讨价还价, 讲价钱. And when you go to a place like, let's say, a market or something where there's no actual fixed price, you'll always have to bargain for whatever you're trying to buy. As a foreigner in China, you will always get the worst deal possible. They'll always increase the price so high, and then you'll get it down to what you think is a low level, but you're still getting ripped off, and it's simply because you are a foreigner. When the initial outbreak of this pandemic started in China, and that's right, it did start in China, whether it started in a lab or whatever, it still started in China, okay? So when the virus started, there was a hell of a lot of discrimination towards foreigners. Now, I did make another video about this very subject, so I'll just put in the card for you to click on the link and you can go and check that out. But there was a lot of discrimination towards foreigners. I remember trying to get into a lift or an elevator. What are you beeping at down there? I remember I made a video about how Taiwanese people don't beep their horn. I guess they do. So anyway, when I got into an elevator or a lift or whatever you want to call it, a dianti, I remember getting in a lift and there was a group of Chinese people and they just decided that they did not want to take that elevator with a foreigner. I also remember that when the initial outbreak of the pandemic started in around January of 2020, well, it originally started about a month before that, but the Chinese government covered it up. Anyway, that's another story. So I was in Beijing, and I had to take a train from Beijing all the way to Dalian, which is about a 6-hour journey, right? I was at the station, it was packed full of people. A lot of people were getting on that train. It was a high-speed train. And when I got on the train, I got into the carriage, and I was the only person on that train in that carriage. This is kind of weird. The train is empty. I'm the only person in this carriage. There were no other people around me at all. So I'm still on the train and it's still completely empty on this carriage anyway. This is like so weird for China. This is one of the weirdest things I've seen in China. Usually these trains are packed full of people. Now, is it because the Chinese people didn't want to get into the same carriage as a foreigner? Maybe, I don't know. It's just speculation, but it seems quite logical to me based on the fact that there was already quite a lot of discrimination towards foreigners happening because of the narrative that the Chinese government were perpetuating to the Chinese citizens. So it seems to me that maybe the Chinese customers that got on that train were too afraid to get into a carriage with a foreigner for that 6-hour journey. Can you imagine that? Being on a high-speed train and having a whole carriage to yourself? To be honest with you, it was bloody awesome and I really loved it. But the fact that it was due to discrimination, that absolutely sucks, right? But it was great just traveling on my own in a carriage, no other people, just kicking back and enjoying the 6-hour journey. And I saw some incredible scenery during that journey. So how about discrimination here in Taiwan? Does it compare to the discrimination that I experienced in China? Well, no, not really, to be honest with you. I've only ever been called a Lao Wai once whilst walking down the street, and I even caught it on film. Check it out. They went into shops. 对，我是外国人，你好。So I got called a foreigner once, only once. In China, I must have heard that word like almost every single day while I was walking down the street. Honestly, it is pretty bad the way they do that. So yeah, I've been called a Lao Wai once by a complete stranger. People do sometimes look at you a little bit funny. I'm not sure if that's just my paranoia coming into play, but sometimes I feel like people do look at me like, oh, look, this guy looks a little bit different. But I think, honestly, like the Taiwanese people are used to seeing foreigners around them, especially in a big city like this, Taichung, of like, you know, I think it's 2 million people live here, so they're used to seeing foreigners. Foreigners have been coming to Taiwan, you know, for decades. It's not like China where it's only sort of really just in the past 20 years opened up to foreigners coming in. So really, I've really faced hardly any discrimination here in Taiwan. Now, regarding the whole COVID thing, I personally have not had any discrimination towards me as a foreigner. Sometimes when I get into the lift in the elevator, I do notice like people sometimes turn around, but I've actually seen them do that when a Taiwanese person gets in the elevator too. So it's not because I'm a foreigner, it's just because they're a little bit paranoid about this virus perhaps. So yeah, I've hardly faced any discrimination while I've been here in Taiwan. You know, obviously it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And I did recently read a tweet on Twitter from this Malaysian girl. She was apparently walking down the street and a Taiwanese woman approached her and told her to stop spreading the virus. She got quite aggressive with her, shouting at her, saying that she's Indonesian, even though this girl is from Malaysia. You know, like, what does your like nationality have to do with anything? This girl is just living in Taiwan. She's probably been in Taiwan for a long time. She's not going around spreading the virus. And this virus does not discriminate. It doesn't care where you're from. It doesn't care what you look like or who you are as a person. It'll just go after anyone, which is why we all need to work together to try and get rid of this thing. And there's no room in this story for discrimination, okay? So anyway, guys, that's all I wanted to say about this whole discrimination thing in Taiwan versus China. I feel that Taiwan is a much better country for foreigners to come over. People aren't pointing at you, calling you a lawai and trying to rip you off left, right, and center, you know. People really welcome foreigners here in Taiwan, which is why if you're considering going to China, you should maybe rethink that and come to Taiwan where you will be much more welcome. So anyway, that's another video from me, YGZ Taiwan. If you like this video, give it a like, give it the old thumbs up. Maybe leave a comment for me, and also if you're not already, why not subscribe to the channel and keep up to date with my adventures here in Taiwan. One last thing, I'd just like to thank my Patreon members, Harry, Jack, Onio, Gumara, and Scott. You guys are amazing and you've really kept me going through these difficult times. If you guys haven't already checked out my Patreon, there is a link on my channel's banner. Go and check it out. You can support this channel for as little as £3 a month, and you can get a few little perks. I do sometimes make some private videos and post them on Patreon. So anyway, guys, wow, can you believe it? It's starting to rain just as I finished the video. That's great. So anyway, guys, see you in the next one. Bye for now.